What do you think are your important books? We were talking about the encyclopedia. What are other books who made an impression for you? So important books you read over and over again.
So personally, I just read books that deal with Star Trek or tell me something about Star Trek. I don't read any novels or actually, I do collect Star Trek comics, but I rarely have time to read them. I do collect uh, nonfiction books, nonfiction Star Trek books. I have, I don't know how many, but I have, I think nearly all of them. The ones that I really like are the ones that, well, the chronology, the encyclopedia, the star charts and stellar cartography, um, the books that deal with aliens. There was this members of the Federation, I think, from the late 80s, that deals with, gave some fictional background to the species that were seen in the first season of TNG and also on TOS. Everything that kind of gives me more information about the planets or aliens or starships. There were these books released by Eaglemoss before they went bankrupt, kind of featured all the starships in the Star Trek universe, and especially the alien ones, which I like more than the Federation ones, actually. So I liked and loved those books and also contributed to them. So basically everything that deals with aliens, planets, starships, yeah, those things I like best. And as I said, the encyclopedia and the chronology.
Yeah, and only when you're speaking of these background books, only the official ones, or also do you have books from FASA, Last Unicorns, or Spaceflight Chronology?
I have all the role-playing game books from all the different companies that made the role-playing games, because, I mean, it's all completely non-canon, obviously, but it's still interesting to read 5 pages about Betazed, or I don't know, 10 pages about the Bolian homeworld. So, I have all those books also. And at the beginning, I didn't want to actually buy or read those books because I thought it's non-canon. They have information that is not, I mean, it's not really in the episodes. But then I got the first one was about members of the UFP also, I think it was called. And I liked that it had additional images of a species that might have only been seen in one episode, and gave you background information on the Grazerites and their homeworld, and Yarish Inyo, the Federation president. So I really enjoyed that a lot, and that is when I bought all the old stuff. And also FASA, obviously, the Star Trek 4 source book update. That was a book that I chased down for many years because I knew it had information on all the background aliens and the Federation Council, also the Ariolo. And I mean, that one I really love as well. So, I've got all that stuff. Also, I have books on every imaginable topic you can think of, psychology and philosophy, ethics in Star
I
Trek.
saw your book about cooking dishes, yeah.
Yes.
The recipe book.
Right. I have that one too. And the latest one, actually, I like best. I had the other ones also, but those are really things that look yummy and that I want to make. And like every 2 weeks or so, I make Romulan flatbread now, and I'm also going to.
Yeah, I had that book just last weekend in the hand in the bookstore, and have you tried the drink Green Extra Green? Is it worth it?
To be honest, the only thing I've made from this is the Romulan flatbread. Nothing else so far. I might try the green stuff later on.
And from the books you mentioned, as you said, you also have some that have non-canon background information. Is there anything in there that you would want to see in the official series, if not just some background graphics?
In my brain, those things are stored separately. So the things that are actually on screen that I write about, and the things that are just seen, in such books. So I really, really can't think of anything at the moment that I read in some of those books that I would like to be. No, actually, I mean, one thing that I always wanted to see is the Fleet Museum, and now we got it. And there were, for example, images. I think, there were images in the ships of the line calendars that had the Fleet Museum. The one we saw finally in Star Trek Picard looks different, but this is something that I was really looking forward to that we could finally see that. I'm happy with what we get.
Yeah, for me, for example, it was this one background story, the drop away line about McCoy's daughter, and that was
Joanna.
Joanna, exactly. There was an entire novel about this. That was, yeah, right, kind of fitting to justify. Yes, nice to see, and yeah, would love to have this added in later episode or something like this.
Well, maybe in Strange New Worlds. You never know who you're going to meet in later seasons, so who knows?
Yeah. And yeah, quite obviously, we see in the background you have some Starship collectibles. So what do you have there? Any special editions? Something from the set, for example?
Well, most of the ships that you see behind me are the Eaglemoss models. I think I got all of them except for the Star Trek Online ones. And now I'm trying to get the ones that, were released when Eaglemoss went bankrupt. And I got 2 of the ships from the 32nd century today, which I'm really happy about that I finally got those ships. I think behind me that is, let me see, this one. Can you see this? Okay. The Vulcan Warp Sled or Warp Shuttle. This one was used on Star Trek Picard. It's on Geordi's desk. It's not actually seen in the episode because they edited it in a way that you couldn't see any of the things that are on his desk. I was given this more than a year ago, or maybe I think it was a year ago now, having no clue whose desk it appeared on, just given as a gift. And then, of course, you can imagine when I saw the first photos and realized it was on Geordi's desk, I was like over the moon, absolutely.
Yeah. It's a shuttle disconnectable, or is it glued together? I don't want to break it apart. It's an official prop.
No, I mean the one of the nacelles always comes off, but no, it's glued together, so you can't really take it off. And I never had this. I never had this model kit as a kid, but I didn't write an article, but I did some writing about all the other occasions when this model was used on screen. It was in Wesley's quarters in the Dolphin, and it was in season 1 in several guest quarters, Admiral Mark Jameson's guest quarters, for example. So I really love that. And somewhere there's an Enterprise somewhere here. Did I put it away?
Can you tell me more about the book I see? It looks ancient.
This one?
Yeah.
That's just Picard's book that he has in one of the 4 books that he has in his ready room on TNG. It's not the original, obviously, but I managed to find out the right edition, and it's always open to some page that is also seen in a TNG episode. I wrote a really long article about this, tracing down all the pages that had been seen on screen for Ex Astris. This was before the Blu-ray release, so it was really using DVD screenshots to find out which pages this was. Involved squinting of the eyes. And when Star Trek Picard, when the first episode of the first season was released, and I watched it like in the middle of the night, there was the scene in the archive where you see that book, and I was able to make out the page they had opened for the episode. So that made me really happy that they, actually managed to find the right book also for that scene. And then I realized, okay, this is going to be fun. This is going to be good. And that is when I started, I wrote the observations articles at Ex Astris Scientia for TNG and also for the first season of Picard. So that shows how much I liked what I was seeing. And that's the book.
If there's anything that you could grab from the set, what would it be?
Of Star Trek Picard?
Anywhere.
I really liked an LCAR screen that was seen in several TNG episodes, because at the beginning I had no clue what it was. It was like it showed some creatures, some fish or something, and how they evolved on planet Denkia 4, I think it was. But you never saw any of that. I found it interesting, and I kind of had a hunch what it might be. And it was seen in several TNG episodes and also one DS9 episode in the classroom or in the schoolroom, I think. And later it was sold online. It never occurred to me to actually bid for it or buy it, but I could get a close look at it. And it shows the evolution of the aquatic animals on that planet. And because I'm a biology teacher, I always was fascinated by that. And I know that it was made by Rick Sternbach, and he included many in-jokes And yeah, I would really love to get a good look at that one day.
That reminds me of the Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Apua, the Hawaiian fish in the TNG classroom.
And Rascals,
And that was my funniest article I could find in the encyclopedia, because I found the name obviously funny.
Yes, me too. Yeah, I remember that. Humu Humu Nuku Nuku Apua. I have no idea how to say it in English, but I remember it. Yeah.
Yeah, so you also had contact with the production staff, evidently. So before we go to the Star Trek Picard times, in the past, did you also contact official persons who were involved? You mentioned Rick, Mike Okuda, for example.
Absolutely. I'm in contact. I was in contact. I still am in contact when I have questions, for example, with Mike Okuda, Rick Sternbach. John Eves has become a friend. Doug Drexler. I think I was in contact with Geoff Mandel, obviously. Dan Carey, I think I sent him some emails when I had some questions about his things. Andy Probert also. So there are some I managed to find on the internet. Mm-hmm. The first one was Mike Okuda, definitely. And he has always been the kindest, most helpful person you can imagine. All of them. Mike Okuda even helped me on a school project once. Do you want to hear that story?
Oh, yes.
Yes, okay. Of course.
So this is like, how long is that ago? 2008 it must be, when I have no idea what this is called in English, ein Referendar, a teacher in training, I guess. Or when I was learning to be a teacher, which works completely different from the way it does in America. And at the end, you had to write some kind of longer essay dealing with a sequence of lessons that you taught. And I decided to do this in English in a year 10 class. And the book dealt with science fiction stories. So we did that. And kind of, I hit a wall. I didn't know how to continue this. And because I was also kind of, it was stressful. And I really didn't know how to make this interesting enough for the people that were to grade it. And then I thought, how can I bring Star Trek into this? And I think there was some kind of exercise in the book that dealt with NASA, and I knew that Mike Okuda designed some of the mission patches for NASA. And I asked him if my students were to design a new NASA logo and write a short text in English, why they chose this and why they chose the colors. Would you be able to, take a look at it and pick a winner? He said, oh, sure, no problem. And he did that. And for every single entry from my students, he wrote a comment and told them what he liked about the design. And so that was just the kind of thing you can imagine somebody doing. And it was, it kind of, because I knew suddenly there was a Star Trek twist to what I had to do, what was causing me so much worries. And then everything was easy all of a sudden. So he helped me with that. And there was a winning entry. And that was super kind and nice of him. And that made everything better for me at that point. So, yeah, I've been in contact with many of them for many years now. I did a trip to Los Angeles, actually 2 trips to Los Angeles about 10 or 11 years ago, where I went to all the filming locations. Saw where, Vasquez Rocks, where Kirk fought the Gorn, or Starfleet Academy, and all kinds of places where they filmed Star Trek. Back then, I was in regular contact with Doug Drexler because I think he still had his blog. Sometimes I sent him screenshots of the things he was writing about, actual screenshots from the episodes. So we also kind of became online friends. And when I was in Los Angeles, he invited me to his place. And, his wife, the late, great Dorothy Duda, she made iced tea, the best iced tea I've ever tried in my whole life. And we had that. I met his parrot, Bika. So that was cool. And then he took me on the, Universal Studios set, I think, where they filmed the Psycho House and goodness, what is that in English? Jaws, yeah, where they had this Jaws attraction. I think that is what it was. And gave me a background tour of the place. So I could see behind the buildings and see everything there. And of course, they filmed Fairhaven and St. Clair in Killing Game there. So that was really awesome going there. So yeah, they've been the people that work on Star Trek. They've been the nicest people you can imagine to me, just a regular fan. Also Dave Blass, who is kind of my contact at Star Trek Picard. He's the best. They are all the best. Really, really kind, nice people. Yeah. Oh, I have to tell you another story. If you have time, I can tell you another story about that trip, because my friends, I'm lucky that all my friends are also Trekkies. My closest friends are Trekkies like me. And they were making jokes about me making articles at Memory Alpha about very obscure things. And I think at that point I had added screenshots and also appearances to the Iguana, Leguan, so Iguana article at Memory Alpha. And I, proud as I was, I told them, today I created or I edited the Iguana article, and they were like, oh, goodness, what crazy things are you doing? What happens next? Are you going to write an article on plumbing in Fairhaven? So, okay, I said, okay, yeah, well, ha, and never thought about it again. But then when I was on the set where they filmed Fairhaven, there were some tubes, sticking out of the ground. And I took this photo of me standing next to them and said, yep, now I have all the research I need for plumbing in Fairhaven. So it's a nice combination of working on Memory Alpha and visiting the sets, and also my friends and their sense of humor.
What question did you ask one of them that was then finally answered to you? So giving you the definite answer, helping you with the research where you were stuck.
Okay, so with Mike Okuda, the great thing was that when TOS was remastered, I was in contact with him, and they introduced some starships or new shuttles in the background. And I asked him, if he could give us some additional information that we could use at Memory Alpha, some names or registries of ships. So that was really great that, because this directly went into Memory Alpha and still is there. For example, in Court Martial, the Intrepid is seen, which was never seen there in the original episode, because later it gets destroyed with all the Vulcans on board. And, he gave me that extra information, and I was so happy because I knew it's not just for me personally, because, it ends up at Memory Alpha. Everybody knows that now. So that was a cool thing. Another question that finally was answered after so many years was in Conspiracy. On Ditalics B, there is a cargo crate that featured some kind of emblem or logo. And I had always wondered, what is that? It's so dark in that scene, also in the remastering, that you really cannot see what is happening there. And, you just know there's a cargo crate and there's some logo. And I always pictured this must be for the Ditalics. Is it Ditalics Mining Company or something? There must be something. And I was talking to Rick Sternbach about something completely different and said, oh, by the way, do you have any idea what might have been on this cargo crate? And it turned out that he had designed that logo. He went into his garage and found the original sketch. And also he remembered what color it was printed on. He sent that to me, and then I was finally able to solve my personal riddle, what this logo was all about. I worked together with Brett Wilder at Star Trek. Let me think. Star Trek Design. There are two Star Trek sites I work with: Star Trek Design and Star Trek Design Project. Right. Star Trek Design deals with reused chairs, furniture, glasses, glassware, and Star Trek Design Project deals with all the logos and alien emblems that you see in episodes. And I work together with him because I really suck at drawing things, but he doesn't. And he, based on the information we got from Rick, he was able to recreate the logo, and if you look it out, it's there. And that was a big, really small thing, but a big thing I was pondering about and wanted to know, what is this? And Rick Sternbach was able to answer that, thankfully. So those small things, it's not big things, it's small, tiny things. But if you only focus on stuff in the background, I mean, those are the things that interest you, I guess.
Yeah. For me, it was always making sense out of the universe, Star Trek, the movies, the first movie, and even more so in the second movie, because you get the impression they didn't know what to do. That's also colorful, but once you find out the system, information is really hard to track down there.
There are things that really interest me, and there are things that I couldn't care about less, and that is uniforms and starship length. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. People always ask me, when are you going to write a tweet on the uniforms in Star Trek Picard? And I said, it's not going to happen. It's not something that interests me. You have to find somebody else.
Next time on the podcast.
How did you come to work on Star Trek Picard?
I was contacted on Twitter by somebody I didn't know. Would you consider signing an NDA? Absolutely, I could do that. And then I Googled his name and found a Wikipedia article, and it was Dave Blass. And then I got the first research requests and started working. I didn't really get any script information. It was always very, very obscure, but which is the good thing,